Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And we're Surefire Industries I don't know.
See, I fucked up and I told you I was ready to go and then immediately grabbed my water bottle and didn't hit record until like the last second. So I just made it.
But you were ready. You went into Indiana Jones this episode.
I was
sliding
ready.
In with the
Yeah. I was ready when I said I was ready. It turned out 3 seconds later I was wrong and I was truly parched.
Yeah, this show makes me thirsty too. And not the like internet term thirsty where you're like, no.
It gets me that too. It gets me all hot and bothered. But but yeah, like actually so like today I kind of talked about it on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, you got kind of an idea of what I'll be doing today. But I tried to have a topic ready and stuff and like well researched and all that shit like we're known for on this show.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my day off yesterday. Well, not most of it. It was like 3 hours, and then I lost all hope and had a panic attack. And but like I was trying to get a topic together, and it was this horrible thing that like only you would probably be able to understand it because you do this show with me. But when you're trying to put together a topic and you spend a lot of time on it, and then just like after 3 hours, you're like, this isn't going to work. It doesn't work. Yeah. It's not interesting.
And it's always like the things that I find that I'm like almost like the most excited for. Like, this will be a great show topic. And then you get writing it, you're like, this is an awful fucking show topic. But...
Right. I was like, how the fuck? Because mine was about like a Old West hitman, basically. And I was like, how the fuck could this not be interesting? Like, how could this not be a cool story? And then it ended up being like I kind of mentioned it on Twitter, but like it was either really like bland descriptions, like Wikipedia level, where it would just be like, and then he shot, Billy Robinson or some shit, and you don't know who that is, and there's no context for it. You just know he killed a man. And so there's really no story there. Or it was like these stories that got really in depth into the dude's life, but they were so disjointed and poorly written that you like trying to make a coherent show out of it is just impossible. So it's like one paragraph will end at like, and then he left home at the age of 13. And then 4 paragraphs later, it'll be like, before he left home, he had a dog who he loved very much.
Oh, by the way, it's like Grandpa Simpson.
Right. It's like
story time. Yeah.
Go back and tell me that before he left home. Like, a narrative structure, asshole. Don't they know I have a show to do tomorrow?
Write my script for me, damn it.
But I bring that up because it's we were talking about, like being thirsty. But like when I've had to do this, the first time I had to do this, the only time I've done it before today's show, you get that same kind of nervous anxiety you feel when like you have to do a presentation and you didn't do the homework. Like, I
am very familiar with that feeling, by the way.
Right. And so like when I don't have like a real topic and I'm going to just read creepypastas, I get so fucking nervous, especially after you made it clear that the first time I did it was our lowest listened to episode.
Oh, not anymore. So that'll...
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Pressure going.
That actually makes me feel a lot worse. So thank you. But it was...
No, I loved it, though. That was... And I had even thought about, like, actually teaming up. Because if you have not listened to the show, we bring different stuff each week. But we don't discuss it with each other. We never know. Sometimes we give little clues on Twitter and stuff. But,
right.
Like, I never know what Ben's going to talk about and vice versa. So, but I thought about like breaking that rule and just doing a creepypasta like episode, but that's not this week. This will be the half creepypasta.
Yeah, because creepypasta is my break glass in case of you don't have shit for the show that day. Like it's a total emergency escape button and
parachute. And
like I totally try not to like I never want it to be the regular thing I'm doing. But it is good to know I have that trump card in case of anything just going south. And like something that happened yesterday where it's like you're doing everything right to be prepared for the show. And then you just like, it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah, and I'm terrified of that because I always end up putting my stuff together. Like, I usually have a topic picked out ahead of time and, like, know, like, what it's about, but I won't, like, write anything until the day we record, which is Thursdays. But those also tend to be very hectic days for me at work.
Right.
So one of these times that's going to bite me in the ass, and I either will have to run home and use, like, the 30 minutes between when I get home and when we record to just be, like, furiously typing, or I'll just be like,
Yeah, and I have that only. It's like I tend to work on Thursdays, and usually I don't have enough time to put a whole thing together before the show after I'm done working. But so I usually have it together on Wednesdays. But maybe I should move that up
Same
a
deal.
few days because it didn't
yeah,
work
it
this
doesn't
week.
really matter like what day you're used to doing it, because what happens, like you said, sometimes it just falls through. I've had a lot of time. I have a whole like Google Docs folder full of things that I was like, this is an awesome idea for a show, and then you start like reading it and actually trying to put it together. Like it just doesn't work.
Well,
like,
I mean, yeah, just nothing hurts more than like what I did yesterday, where it's like you delete 3 pages of notes because you're just like, this isn't going to ever be a show.
Or it turns into a 3-week show.
Yeah, that's
like,
also really bad. I don't know what's worse, not having anything or having everything.
Having too much, yeah.
For this show. So yeah, that's what I'm bringing today. I got a story lined up here. I do like to preface this because I know people when they write these things, whether they've been writing for a week or been writing for years, they put a lot of work into it. So I like to make it clear I'm not bashing them as writers. If you've ever written anything before, you've written something unintentionally funny, and that's usually what I tend to go after. Who knows? This might actually be really terrifying, but probably not.
Well, and you got to keep in mind the platform. Like,
Right.
It could be the best story ever written. We're doing a podcast where we make fun of stuff and bullshit back and forth. So
Exactly.
So yeah, just the same as we said after the last one, we're not making fun of the writer or the writing, but we may say stuff like...
Yeah, I never want to discourage any writer except those ones who wrote about the topic that didn't work, who could not keep a goddamn coherent thought together. Those guys can get
Never
fucked.
touch a pen again, you assholes, or a keyboard.
But this story I picked out, I kind of picked out as kind of a throwback when I've talked about like Japanese myths and stuff. It was very... The thing I really loved about those topics was how it's almost like a how-to on how to survive something. And it's always like bullshit and really like unfair. So that's kind of... That's a bit of the message in this story. This story is called Closed Eyes. There is no author name attached to it. So if by some coincidence the writer of this wants credit or just wants me to destroy this episode, I'm more than happy to do either. So this is called Closed Eyes. If you are reading this, then consider yourself lucky. I just managed to escape that creature and type this all up on my laptop as I hide in my apartment closet. Like when people get away from a creature, is that where you go?
And is that what you do? Like, thank God I survived. Let me grab my laptop and type this thing up.
Hey, hang on, I gotta duck into my closet. Then you didn't escape, because that's like
right. If you escaped, you're like
you're on a train.
I was gonna say grabbing
home free.
McDonald's, but I've got McDonald's on the brain now because of the last creepypasta. But yeah, you're just doing normal shit because you escaped.
Yeah, this won't be as good as the McDonald house, I'm afraid. But now I apologize if my grammar and spelling may be really sloppy, but that is only because I don't have much time. So I want you to remember this. We're on a timetable here, because this is actually a really long story. I am writing this to warn you and everyone of this monstrosity that is going to be the death of me in a short amount of time. It is a creature referred to as Trapo Espiritu, which is Spanish for rag spirit. I know it sounds dumb, but please keep reading. I was warned about this being by my mother, who has recently been warned by her mom. A generation to generation sort of thing. Well, anyways, Trapo Espiritu is supposedly known to go house by house each night, provoking the host of the houses and slowly and brutally killing them.
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
So it's a generational story passed down from grandmother to mother to son or daughter, who the gender's not clear yet, or I missed it.
Yeah.
But then it says that the grandmother recently told the mother. So, like, why did she hold on to this until now? Like, oh, by the way, yeah, there's this.
Hang on, your granddaughter's and like she's fucked. Just so you know. Now that she's an adult, I don't know. There's a lot here I don't understand already. So, where Trapo stripes... Trapo is such a bad name for a monster.
I love it. If you're a clown, though, you gotta be a clown monster.
Yeah, like, because I keep wanting to say Chapo. Where Trapo strikes next is never known, but death can be avoided, and that's precisely what I am here to tell you, even though death is approaching them as they write this.
Yeah, like, how much credence do you put into advice on how to survive from somebody that says they're about to die?
Yeah, and like this goes into so much detail. That's why I picked it. First off, if Trapo will be visiting you next, you'll know the day that follows the night of its coming. There are 4 signs of Trapo's approach. Your day will go smoothly, and not a thing wrong should happen, except you'll feel a strong gut feeling that something isn't right. That's basically every day of my life.
I was going to say, that's great to hear if you're somebody with anxiety, because that's exactly...
Yeah, so I will never be able to pick up that Trapo's coming for me, because that's just... I just, that's how I live.
What's that feeling? Oh, yeah, it's Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, I had to wake up and face people. Throughout your day, you will be able to see figures in your peripheral vision wherever you go. This will not scare or startle you, surprisingly. Why is that? But whenever you turn to see the figure face to face, it will have vanished as if it were never there. But you won't be surprised, or you won't be scared, but you will be surprised.
That again, I hate when that happens.
These figures are believed to be the ghosts of Trapo Espiritu's past victims. You will have gone somewhere on this day, maybe work or the store, but somewhere nonetheless. You will come home, and when you do, you should see a small piece of white notebook paper taped to your front door. It should say in clear and neatly written letters, Ojos Curados. I don't know what that... It doesn't say what that is.
But it'll say it on the note.
Yeah, so I guess it's real important. Upon finding this paper, it is imperative that you burn it in your fireplace. Make sure no one sees the paper nor the burning of it. Your last sign will be that you will go to bed at 12 o'clock unintentionally. Even upon knowing that you will without intention. That's what unintentionally
I like the idea
means.
That you just, trip and fall into bed, whoops!
I do like the repeat of unintentionally and without intention.
Right.
That's one would follow the other. I also like that, if you don't burn the paper, you're already fucked.
Yeah, so, it's real fair for people I don't have technically I have a fireplace, but it's blocked out, it's not a working fireplace. So if I burn paper in it, I'm burning my house down. Which I suppose would spare me from the ghost, but...
Right, if you don't have a fireplace, can you, throw it on the grill or something? Anyway, now this is the time to get comfy and adjust whatever needs to be adjusted, like pillows and etc. This is the only chance you will get to move at all until sunrise, so take clever advantage of it. Once you get into a position that you are sure you will not toss and turn in, you will fall to sleep. You will have plenty of dreams during the time of your sleep, dreams you never knew were possible, dreams so real you'll feel as if it's more than a dream, more than a feeling, even. I added that.
Oh, okay, I was going to say.
Like you're really there. Do not take this time for granted and enjoy it while you can. Be sure you like getting comfy, Steve, because Trapo's coming. Your pleasure will turn...
Be relaxed, yeah.
Be relaxed. Your pleasure will turn to fear real soon. That sounds like a horror theme park.
Hey. Yeah. You think cleaner thoughts than me. I was thinking those...
Dominatrix?
Sirens, or, that too. Just anything where you're just you're with somebody and you're all right, this is great. And then all of a sudden they're jaw unhinges and they eat you whole.
By the time your dreams are over, you will become fully aware of the noises around you as if you had just closed your eyes and went to bed. Your eyes, still closed, be sure to keep them that way for the next 2 hours. It should now be 4 o'clock and 2 hours until sunrise. I'm very confused. When we jump, 4 hours ahead.
Yeah, well...
So, like, you fell asleep at midnight, but you're supposed to get comfy, like, before midnight? I don't...
You got to be prepared to unintentionally go to bed.
By the time your dreams are over, you'll become fully aware. All right. So it should now be 4 o'clock and 2 hours until sunrise. Now Trapo's game begins. You'll begin to hear a scratching sound at your door. Trapo Espiritu has arrived. The scratching will carry on for a minute or two before stopping dead in its tracks. Your nose will begin to itch greatly. Don't scratch it. The itch will go away on its own. It's almost like a doctor describing just like a rash. Like, this has nothing to do with Trapo, but just don't...
My assumption is every itch would always go away on its own if you had the, like, fortitude to not scratch it. Like,
yeah, put some lotion on it. That's what I did for my tattoo, so... Trapo is now spiritually connected to you. Now let's discuss Trapo's appearance, since you'll never see it for yourself if you want to survive. So it's useful, I guess. Trapo has the body of a normal human being. He stands at about 6 foot 3 inches tall and is a bit round at the waist. Well, that's necessary. Fucking judgmental prick.
Chubby ghost. Yeah.
Trapo is no human, though. He is made up of messily sewn rags and leaves, so there's nothing... They just said he has the body of a normal human being, but he's made out of rags and leaves. That's not... He still makes out a perfect humanoid look, though. His face, no different than yours or mine, except with 2 sewn-up eyes. You know, that little... detail.
Yeah, caveat, yeah.
Wait, your eyes aren't sewn up too, Steve? Trapo cannot see you, find you, or kill you while his eyes are sewn shut. The only way his eyes can open is by none other than you. Since Trapo Espiritu is now spiritually connected to you, you pull the trigger of your own demise. If you open your eyes even the slightest bit, it will cause the stitching in its eyes to unravel. Then it will be able to see and kill you in its slow and gruesome manner.
Well, then can't you pretty much do whatever the fuck you want, like itch your nose, as long as you don't open your eyes?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, like, if he can't kill you while his eyes are shut, then what the fuck? Maybe if you, like, scratch your nose, then,
Yeah, anything you do, don't fart, his eyes will fling open.
That would be the worst way to die to a monster, like, just a fart gives you away. How did I escape? When Trapo attacked, I managed to evade its attack and locked it in my room to buy me some time. So that's apparently the horrible monster, is you can just dodge it and then and then shut it in a room.
I parried and backstabbed, and that took off a good chunk of its health.
Don't think that this means you can run away from Trapo once you've opened your eyes. Once Trapo's eyes have been opened, it will follow you until given the chance to kill you, if not done there and then. I have mere minutes left of my life until it comes. I cannot stop it. All I can do is warn you, so I continue here. After your nose itches for some time, Trapo will now be in the room with you, its stench like that of rotten eggs and scum, its voice raspy and deep. Trapo will begin its game by crawling up the walls and ceiling at a slow, eerie pace, making noise while doing so. Ignore this and keep your eyes shut. Trapo will notice your resistance and will begin to call your name in its grotesque, deep voice while still crawling. Keep your eyes shut and don't move. Try imagining something that you really like to do, like a walk, or what the fuck does...
Or just not die?
Yeah, just, you know what I like? Keeping my eyes shut when death's on the line.
Right.
That will make it easier to ignore. Trapo won't stop there, though. It'll move on to things even more tempting. You may hear a breaking of glass or ripping of stuffing. It may sound and feel like your favorite toy or most prized possession is being ruined. Don't worry. Trapo cannot break or touch any of your things. At least not when its eyes are still sewn closed.
Because I can't see them.
We have a no destruction policy here at Trapo Espiritu Incorporated. Trapo will then begin to cheat a little bit, as you may feel some sort of liquid dripping onto your face. Mere drips, but still keep quiet, calm, and eyes stay shut.
I like the thought that, like, climbing on the walls and calling your name and then killing you if you open your eyes isn't cheating.
That's fair game.
Dripping, yeah.
But yeah, the moment you start like spitting on me, that's not.
Hey! Time out! That's
Well, I mean, it's why in real sports, when people get spit on, that's why brawls break out.
It's true.
But it doesn't matter how many times you punch me in the face. So yeah, if you made it this far, it should now be 5 o'clock. 1 hour left until sunrise. 1 hour left to go through with this. Like, Trapo just sounds really fucking annoying. Like, he's been doing this for an hour. Just in your room, just spitting on you and like, hey, Ben, hey.
Look over there.
It sure would suck if I killed you anyway with your eyes shut. Don't you want to look at me? Trapo Espiritu will be well aware of this and will start using more drastic tactics than before. The slight creaks that you heard on your walls and ceiling will turn into violent thumpings. Your name being called will have now morphed into a very recognizable voice of a loved one of yours who most likely passed. Do not be fooled. This is not your loved one, just another one of Trapo's impersonations. The voice will be...
Now I'm thinking of, like, all the terrible... Like, you might live, but your neighbors just heard, like, loud thumpings in your room and, like, a relative calling your name out. Like...
Yeah.
It's like, you live, but now you're the incest kid. Was it worth it? Like...
Is it worth it? The voice will be growing louder and more demanding the longer time goes on. The liquid dripping on your face will have increased in rate, and you may feel drenched by it. I just imagine like a garden hose.
Yeah.
Like a super soaker of his spit. If you still have not opened your eyes and kept silent, then it should now be 5:50 in the morning, 10 more minutes. Now, Trapo is starting to get desperate. The thumping you heard will now be replaced by what feels like an earthquake in your room. Your bed will start shaking violently, covers thrown off of you. The liquid will have stopped, but this is replaced by the terrifying fact that Trapo is now on the end of your bed. Your eyes are almost able to open on their own, so you must now keep your eyes closed as tightly as possible. Stay calm.
As opposed to, like, when your eyes can't open on it, like, do you normally have to, like, physically lift your eyelids with your fingers? Like...
Yeah, I'm very confused by this. Like, maybe so much ruckus is going on that like he's saying like naturally your eyes will want to open up, but don't do that. Stay calm, stay still, keep your eyes closed. It's almost over. Trapo's demanding shout of your name in a loved one's voice will now have changed to a violent screech of your name in the same voice, but warped and ruined. It is now 1 minute until sunrise. 1 minute left.
I like that he gives nondescript things like he'll begin to do this, so now it's obviously 5:40.
Yeah.
It's like, wait.
He will do this, and by the time he does this, it will now be 5. Like, how does he know it this specifically if he fucked up?
True.
1 minute left. Stay strong. Stay calm. Stay still. Don't scream. Keep your eyes closed. Your bed is now shaking even more violently than before. Your head vibrating. Your body shivering in the freezing cold. Your ears shriveling from the piercing scream of the malevolent entity. Trapo Espiritu is now right on top of you, its face inches from yours. It cannot kill you and it cannot hurt you, but it can scare you. This is the ultimate test of bravery. An ultimate test of trust. You are now face to face with a powerful and evil being able to kill you with ease, and the only thing that is protecting you are your two shut-tight eyes. The last 10 seconds have come. With that, Trapo will scream loudly, horribly. You will feel the residue of spit and heat and stench coming from its unnaturally wide mouth as it blasts your eardrums with its shriek. Then, as soon as it started, as it will have stopped. All of it will have stopped. The shaking, the screaming, and even the liquid on your face will be gone. Your covers will be on your bed and nothing will have changed. Everything will be just as it was yesterday. Not a single thing moved. Sunrise has come and it is now safe to get up. When you do, you will have forgotten about your encounter with the being and even about the previous day. Trapo Espiritu will be gone and you will have taken your memory of it and the day before with it. It does not want you to remember it if you survive, and make sure you don't. You will serve yourself breakfast in your kitchen, and when I hope he just goes on with this person's life.
You will find a pair of socks. They don't quite match, but they're close enough.
You'll meet a special gal, but she'll leave you, and then you'll find a less special gal, but she's stable and makes a good income.
You'll never admit to her that she was the backup plan.
Yeah, she'll leave you anyway, and you'll die alone. You will serve yourself breakfast in your kitchen, and when you do, you will find a small white paper on your kitchen table that says Frequentar Finale, or Haunting Ends. It will all
I thought it wanted you to forget it happened. It's like, why would it leave a note?
Yeah, a shitty note. And I bet if you don't throw this one in the fireplace, you're fucked too. It'll all be over then. You will end up throwing the paper away and going on with your normal life. Trapo Espiritu will never haunt you again. You have won the game, and Trapo will go on to find another unlucky player. If you have, then thank you for reading this far, and I hope this information helps you. I finished typing just in time. I can now smell the stench of rotting eggs and scum and can hear scratching at the closet door. Trapo Espiritu is upon me.
I applaud him, though, for, like, using the last moments of his life to write up a letter to nobody. Yeah.
Yeah, just some instructions like, hey, it's that thing, though. Like, how do you know how the rest of it goes if you fucked up? Did he get to, like, the very end?
Well,
and then,
and then, open his eyes at the last,
Like, did he have his alarm set just, like, a minute early? Like, his clock was wrong, and then just like,
I want to be able to snooze for a minute so that I can... Well, yeah, I like that it hinges on, it's like, oh, by now it'll be 6 and sun will be up. Sun's not up here at 6. Like, does he only hunt during daylight saving time, or like?
Yeah, like, and what time of the year is this? Because like it's October here now. The sun doesn't come out until like 7:30 right now.
Yeah, that's getting close to 8 here. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so many questions. I assume he knows like the steps to survive from the story passed down from the grandma to the mom just recently. Like,
which you think like if that was public knowledge, then like.
Then why bother writing it up as you're dying? Like,
and if you forget it all, then how do you remember how to avoid it? Like, how does anyone pass that knowledge down?
I'm thinking, though, if I was Trapo, it says, oh, as it's getting closer, things get, more violent. Wouldn't you just get real quiet for a second so they think you're gone? That would be the best trick to get them to open their eyes.
Yeah. Jump
be
scare
like, all
devouring.
Right, the sun sound suddenly stops. It must be 6 o'clock. You open your eyes and the clock says 5:58. Fuck, he tricked me again.
Yeah. I really... after, my failure yesterday to prepare, I just spent my Halloween just, like, listening to fucking creepypastas. It's a good way to spend
Halloween, though, yeah.
And, like, that one came on, and I was like, I gotta do that for the show.
I'm a little disappointed, but although you knew they would, that he'd, like, physically describe the creature, the ghost, whatever it's supposed to be, because I was picturing just, like, literally, like, a Disney-style dish rag with, like, eyes, like something you'd see in... maybe that scene in Sword in the Stone where they sing the song and all the shit comes to life and starts like dancing and cleaning the house. Like,
yeah,
which when you say rag ghost, that's what I picture.
Yeah, like if it was just like a fucking dirty laundry basket of rags and like a little fucking demon hand came out of it, I feel like that would be scarier than saying like, it's kind of a rotund gent. Like it's mostly human, but it's actually made of leaves. Like. But that's kind of the problem with like writing any horror fiction, right? Like trying to, like describe something and still keep it scary is pretty much.
Yeah, although that's one of the things that I think I'm not the biggest Lovecraft person in the world. I've only I don't know if I've read any of the books. I think I just listened to like the BBC radio dramas, which were really cool.
Yeah.
Ray Bradbury did this a lot too, where you leave it up to the imagination. Like you give just enough description so you can like mention tentacles or whatever, but you're not like it's 8'5" and a beigey green color with pockmark. Like you don't need to go that in detail with horror, but they're different approaches.
Sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thank you, whoever the anonymous writer is. For
we don't know their name because they died. I mean, the rag ghost got him.
That's true. He's true to his art. But it is funny, like reading some of the comments on that, where it's like people being like their criticism is like, this should seem more rushed and sloppy, and it's like, it's a fucking creepypasta. Did you read it? Like,
I forgot about that. I do admire. And wish I could go back and use it for all of our like video game reviews and stuff. the like, excuse me, all the like grammar and spelling errors. I'm about to die. I want to open everything I ever write with that.
Yeah. I do love that, like, the first thing he says to do is, like, make sure you get good and comfy, you know, have a glass of warm milk by you and fluffy pillows, because some monster's going to come in and just start spitting on you for, like, 6 hours. I mean,
shit, you don't want your, like, arm to start falling asleep on top of that. It's like, well, fuck. Now I'm spit on and uncomfortable.
But it's like, no amount of pillows is going to make, like, keeping my eyes shut, like, it's an endurance challenge. So
see, I'm perfectly safe from this thing because I'm a weirdo. My wife thinks it's like the weirdest thing and doesn't know how like I even survive every night. But I sleep with a pillow over my head, like to block out sound and light.
I actually do that too.
Yes,
and people think I'm a freak, and maybe I am. But it's like this thing will have no chance.
Right. be like, do you hear something? Nah.
It's like, and I have pets with terrible breath, so like, you know, I'm not even going to be thinking like, oh, that smells.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem would be if I get up to let it out. I'm like, fuck, it's not the dog, it's the rag ghost. You got me.
What if you just like Home Alone to your room, or you just like had like a bucket of water on top of your door? And
but the other thing you could do is because like the one weakness that like all, and I always like when you say rags, I always picture dish rags. I know there's other kinds of rags, but there's at least a good chance that if he's 50% made up of dish rags. Like, just keep a cheese grater in your room, because those will fuck up any, like, rag.
Well, he's made of leaves, so you could just rake him away, right? Shove him in a fucking outdoor garbage bag. He's fucked.
I like that he was basically taking all that time to describe a scarecrow. Like, oh, it's rags and leaves. It's like, yeah, we've got a word for that.
Yeah. And Trapo Espiritu, right? But yeah,
yes.
So that was fun. Like I said, these are not going to be ever the regular thing, but they are fun to do for me every now and then. So
I enjoy them. Yes. All right, so I've got one of my like trademark cheery like feel good stories. Although it's pretty short.
You're uplifting. That's what I always say about you.
So yeah.
Anytime I'm bummed out, you're like, well, it could be worse. You could suck more. And that's
maybe
like
one episode.
Advice.
What we'll do is like ahead of time, we'll just send a psychologist a link to all of our previous episodes, and we'll spend an hour with. I said her. I don't know why I always picture female psychologists, even though that certainly goes either way.
Because your only experience with them is like watching The Sopranos.
Right. But anyway, it would be interesting to see a psychologist listen to our show and then like explain why we pick the stories that we pick.
I don't know if I want to know that answer.
So anyway, in 1994, and this is the only time I'm going to say his first name because I'm going to fucking butcher it. It's Mauro Prosperi.
I'm sorry.
He's going to be Mr. Prosperi for the rest of it.
Nope.
It's Mauro. Mayuro. Like I even like went before we started the show and I'm like, how do you pronounce this? And it pulls up like YouTube videos, like you pronounce it, and it's like,
I hope by the time this show comes to an end that there's a compilation out there of how many names just sound like a dying cat.
Anyway, this guy Prosperi, he was a Italian police officer who spent most of his free time training for and participating in extreme marathons because regular marathons are boring. You're only running.
Like, what's an extreme marathon? Like swimming in lava? Like,
apparently, most of the ones that I see and from these examples are just like, a marathon's 26.5 miles or something, 27.
You're asking me to know way too much about fitness.
It's around there, and then the extreme ones are like, oh yeah, well they're 100 miles and it's up a mountain. It's like, well that's fuck, but that's what he liked to do. So when a friend told him about the Marathon des Sables, that's probably not how it's pronounced given where it is, he couldn't resist. That was a 155-mile race across the Sahara, and he knew it would be both a challenge and an opportunity to participate in a desert race, which was something he had not done before. So he was excited. That's his thing, and he finds out about this race. He's like, that sounds cool. He was married at the time and had 3 children, all under the age of 8.
Which he thought was less cool.
Apparently. He's like, yeah, that's boring. I'm going to go out this race. So his wife wasn't really thrilled with his plans. But he assured her and said, don't worry, the worst that can happen is I'll get a sunburn. It's probably something that you shouldn't say before going on a dangerous marathon through the desert. And because I'm talking about this on our show, you won't be surprised to hear that that was not the worst thing that could happen to him.
Oh, no.
So the Marathon des Sables or whatever, it's one of those races where they don't just like require a waiver. Like I think the 5K I ran, you still had to sign on things saying like, I won't sue you if I'm fat and I die.
Basically anything that's going to elevate your heart rate, you have to like sign something now to be like,
right.
I'm not going to hold you responsible if I die.
So not only do they have that, of course, but like their official paperwork to register, forced you to fill out a section that said where you want your body shipped if you die during the race. So that's always a good sign.
Right.
So that year the race only had like 80 participants. The article I'm working from is basically like an interview with him, except for it's all told 100% from his perspective. Like they didn't, have the interview. Oh, what did you do? So it's a narrative from him. And in the article, he says that out of those 80 participants, not all of them were runners, but I'm not sure what that means the other ones were. Like, if they were maybe support staff, or from the sounds of it, there was like time requirements to get from checkpoint to checkpoint, or else you'd be disqualified. So it's not like a 5K here where like 80% of the people are like people that are just showing up to walk so they can say they did the 5K. So I don't know, but the 80 total people going through the desert, 155 miles. He mentions that he was always the first Italian to reach the next stage. Apparently they had this race broke up into stages. And so when he'd reach the end of the stage, he'd hang his Italian flag on his tent. And that way, when the other Italian participants would get to the checkpoints, they could all meet up at his tent. He said it was a lot of fun. He was doing really well in the race. In fact, it was going so good for him, by the fourth day, he was in fourth place. And then the sandstorm hit. So, right.
What a damper.
Yes. This is a guy that's never seen the desert, never been to the desert, and he talks about how he like instantly fell in love with it. And I've only kind of like flown over. We've been to Vegas, but it's not like I've gone trekking through the desert. And I know you've lived on the West Coast and been in Texas and stuff. I don't know how much time you've spent in those areas. It is a cool biome. Like, it's just so different from what most of us are used to. So I could see like seeing it and be like, yeah, this is really neat. When a sandstorm blows up and you're not used to it, you're like, oh fuck, this is hell. So when the sandstorm hit, he was in a stretch of the route where they were running through a field of like dunes. But the pace setters, the three people that were ahead of him, had moved off ahead. They were out of his vision. And there was nobody behind him that he could see when the storm hit. So as the storm materialized, he couldn't see much of anything anyway because it's a freaking sandstorm. He said he turned his back to the wind and used a scarf to shield his face. I think pretty much every living human being would do that, as opposed to being sandblasted by a million tiny pieces of like sand. But he said he wasn't disoriented, but he just knew he had to keep moving because it was such a bad storm. If he stood still, he'd literally get buried in sand. So, that's not good. Eventually, he was able to find a place to shelter down. He said he crouched down and found some shelter and waited for the storm to finish. But the storm lasted 8 hours, so by the time it let up, it was dark. So he climbed to the top of a nearby dune and laid down for the night. He said at this point he was mostly upset because he felt like he wouldn't have a chance to win the race now after being so close for so long. But he wasn't worried about finishing. He was just like, well, shit, now I can't win, but, no big deal. But he probably should have been worried. When he woke up the next morning, he was amazed by how much the storm had changed the landscape. He had his map and his compass, and he was confident that he knew his way. Spoiler, he didn't. But he was struggling to keep track of his route with, like, no landmarks. I don't know how anybody is confident like he's been in this situation in a desert, because that's the one thing you know about the desert is there's, like, no way to tell where the fuck you are. I'm between this sand and that sand.
Oh, yes, this is Sand Mountain, of course.
And then I could see this. He kind of figured, the other runners had to be in a similar situation. It's not like the sandstorm just hit him. So he figured as soon as he saw another runner, they'd team up and they'd finish the race together. But his biggest worry was about finishing that particular stage within the 36-hour time frame, which was required in order to avoid disqualification. And that's what I mean. That's why I know there wasn't people like walking a 155-mile extreme marathon, because you had to hit checkpoints by certain times or else you were disqualified. So he ran for about 4 hours, but he still hadn't seen anyone, so he decided to climb up on a dune and take stock of his surroundings. But what he found wasn't very good. There was nobody and nothing as far as he could see in any direction. And that's about when he finally realized just how screwed he was. I just can't imagine that feeling, like suddenly being like, wait a minute, shit.
This might be worse than a sunburn.
But he was no stranger to extreme sports. He was in very good shape, and I put that he was no dummy, but really all the evidence up to this point suggests that he might be.
He might have,
but but he knew about survival, and they were packed to be fairly self-sufficient. You're running across the desert. It's not like you just go out there with your dry fit t-shirt and shorts and just think, I'm going to make it to the other side of this desert. He had tools with him, a knife, equipment to make camp. He had medicine, and he even had plenty of dehydrated food and energy tablets. The one thing he didn't have much of was water, which is really, not very plentiful in the middle of a desert. He had half a bottle that he had left from the last checkpoint, and so he immediately urinated into his other bottle, because when you're well hydrated, that's when your urine is the most clear and drinkable. So, okay. I don't know. I made a note, like, what do you call a connoisseur of urine? Like, the equivalent of a piss sommelier.
Well, you call him Bear Grylls. The best urine drinker I know.
You see the two of them sitting around and be like, have you ever had a fruity vintage, well-hydrated urine? Clear, a little smoky, let it settle for a little bit. I don't know, like, do you swirl that around and let it breathe before you drink it, or...
You waft it into the air.
But really, that shows he knows what he's doing when it comes to, like, he is at least a little mentally prepared, because it's true. If you know you're eventually going to have to drink your urine, you might as well get it while it's good and not while you're dehydrated and it's just like concentrated toxins. He would only walk when it was cool enough to do so, which I think we're all familiar with that in the desert. You try to make as much distance as you can in the mornings and evenings, and not do so in the noon heat. He had hats to keep his head shaded, and he said, this is his quote, because his skin was so dark he didn't get sunburned. So he was doubly wrong. It was not only not the worst thing that could happen to him, but he couldn't get sunburned anyway, I guess. Near sundown on the second day, he heard the sound of an approaching helicopter. Quickly, he fired his flare, which, if the pilot had seen, would make this a pretty boring podcast topic. But despite being so close...
the pilot saw it and attacked him.
Fuck you, desert wanderer. This is Mad Max. But despite being so close that he could see the top of the pilot's helmet through the cockpit, the pilot did not see him. As it turns out, they weren't actually out there looking for him like he had assumed they were. I'm sure people were, but that helicopter wasn't specifically looking for this lost marathoner. It was found out after the fact that it was a police helicopter that was just returning to base to be refueled. And at the time, even though he had a flare, they weren't those big ocean flares that we picture where you have the little orange gun and you fire it up. Instead, his flare was barely the size of a ballpoint pen. It's well, what the that sounds more like a birthday party thing where you are happy birthday.
His flare was actually a firework that exploded into Mickey Mouse's face, and everybody would just clap.
The pilot saw it and was like, oh, good, that guy's having a party. He's safe. He's fine. The pilot didn't see him, didn't find him. But he was still optimistic that the organizers would find him, because why wouldn't you be confident after wandering aimlessly around the desert for 2 days?
Right.
So he continued on. A few days later, he came across a small Muslim shrine that they called a marabout. The the photo in the article just kind of shows 3 like stone buildings of various heights. They're all like the size of a single room. They're not like houses or something. But apparently they just, throughout the desert, they have these shrines. Unfortunately, there was nobody there aside from the dead body in a casket, which, as it turns out, isn't very helpful when you're lost in the desert. But it was a good place for him to like shelter and hunker down, shelter in place. It is a place that does periodically get visited, so there's a chance that somebody will come across you. While he was there, he climbed up on the roof to put his flag up. That makes sense too. If a helicopter or even passersby come by and they see the flag, that's a good indication somebody's there. While he was up there, he noticed a bunch of bats huddled in the tower, so he grabbed as many as he could, and he then, in a quote, cut their heads off and then used his knife to mush up their insides, like stir them around so that he could drink them.
And that's how Batman was born.
I wrote, "Take that, vampires." but it's disgusting, but it makes sense because at that point, what you need more than anything, you need food, but he had rations. What you really need is liquids. So if you cook, you kill the bats and cook them, you're not getting hydration at all. You're getting the nourishment. But man, I like the mental image of cutting their heads off, then like sticking the knife down in and like blending it up, like it's your NutriBullet blender or something, like
right.
Bat smoothie. He started cooking his rations using fresh urine, not the vintage clear urine that he needed to drink. So again, that kind of shows, it's as gross and like horrible as it sounds, he's thinking this stuff through. Like, why use your good bottled urine?
That's my good piss.
Right. Here's my cooking piss right here.
I'm not wasting. Wow, it really is like wine. Like you have some wine that you use for cooking, other wine that's for drinking.
Right. And he knew which to use for what. And that's what I said. So basically, he was lost, but he was feasting like a king. But one of those like deranged, psychotic kings who drinks bat guts and eats Salisbury steaks broiled in human piss. But, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Apparently, like, he still hadn't realized that he was living in this, like, nightmare that would probably one day be reenacted by Tom Hanks in a volleyball. So he was, like, still in, like, fairly good spirits, and he was in decent health. And that is until a small plane passed by and also didn't see him. And that was apparently, like, the final straw that threw him into despair. His biggest worry was that if he died lost in the desert, they'd never find his body. And the problem with that, for him, it wasn't like, oh, they need to find my body. He was thinking about, in Italy, he was, like I said, a police officer. If he simply went missing, his pension wouldn't be able to be claimed for at least 10 years. So, like, if a person just vanishes, you can't claim their pension until they've been gone for at least 10 years. Whereas if they, like, found his body, like, he wasn't worried about dying, but he wanted to make sure if he died, they'd find his body so his wife and kids, would at least have some income. And it's like, well, that's a great
I feel like you should be able to put a clause in that if, like, you disappear, like, if you're voluntarily running off into the desert and disappear,
right.
Then you get an early pension. At least cut it in half. Like, 10 years, that's ridiculous.
When you get the official letter from the marathon organizer saying, like, we're sorry, your husband didn't finish in time and he's probably dead.
Yeah.
Thanks for competing and join us next year. But, so, I mean, that's where his mindset was. At this point now, like, after not being found the second time, it went from, like, oh, I will definitely be found to, like, fuck, I'm going to die, but I don't want my family to be screwed. So that's what kept him from leaving the shrine. He didn't want to, like, venture out, because if he ventured out and died, he'd never be found, most likely. But staying there meant he would die a slow and painful death of, starvation and dehydration and heat and all that. And he said, fuck that. As long as I'm in the shrine, my body will eventually be found. And so he decided to do the one thing that would be best for him and his family and slit his wrists. So he cut his wrists and laid down to die. When he woke up the next morning...
Sand poured out.
Yes. He realized that he had failed to kill himself, and as he put it, his blood had thickened so much from dehydration that he just wouldn't bleed to death. Like, even though he cut his wrists, it wasn't going to, like, spurt out. But because he's stupidly optimistic about the worst possible things, he took this as a sign that it was just not his time to die. And so it motivated him to like set back out into the desert. Said he walked for days, killing snakes and lizards and insects and whatnot along the way, and eating them raw because he needed the blood. He found dried riverbeds where succulents grew, and he'd like little aloe plants, but they're not usually big, robust plants out in the desert. But he'd squeeze out what he could. He said he was losing so much weight that he became aware like his watch was now like hanging loosely from his wrist. So that's got to be a good feeling. My guess was that he tried to cut the watch's head off and drink its blood too. At this point, it's just like, what? Whose blood can I drink next?
Someone's got to bleed.
Eventually, he came to a small oasis, and it wasn't one of those like Looney Tune mirages that turned out to be lava or something. Instead, it was an actual oasis. And there was a footprint on the bank, which let him know that there had to be people nearby. So that's good news.
That's great. That's fresh blood.
Right. I bet this tastes fresh and virile.
Much better than my urine.
It says he spent like 6 to 8 hours just like laying on his belly at the shore of this oasis, drinking, like taking sips. And again, like who the fuck has the discipline? I get it. I mean, physically, that's what you have to do. If you're that dehydrated and you just gulp down a bunch of water, you're just going to puke anyway. But at the same time, I'm fucking dehydrated and I just came across water. I'm going to be like diving in it and just like whatever. I'll puke it up and drink it back down again.
I haven't been desert dehydrated, but I have been like pretty like stop what I'm doing and get this guy some fucking water dehydrated. And it is actually a little bit tough to choke down water. Like you want the water, but like you're like there's like something in your stomach that just like you will sip on it and stuff naturally because you just you know it's like you feel as though you've overeaten.
Yeah. That's what I don't know though. I just picture myself doing that like jackass thing where you're splashing around in the water like woohoo.
But you would totally like jump into the water, I think, but like you wouldn't actually.
Well, that's the thing is the whole time he talked about how he like heat doesn't bother him. Like I said, he's dark skinned anyway. He wasn't getting sunburned, although I imagine it's still drying your skin out pretty good. But the whole time he never once complained about the heat or the conditions. And when he even after slitting his wrists, I assume bandaged them up because you don't want to go walking out like still leaking. But he never struggled to like move or like make distance either. Like the physical condition that he was in, it must have been amazing. But like I said, it wasn't like this was his first like extreme marathon. It was just the first one where he got lost in a fucking desert. But anyway, while he was at the oasis, he eventually spotted some goats, and when he went towards them, he found a young girl, a shepherd girl. The girl was terrified by the sight of him, which he completely understood. But she
said, "Boo!"
Yeah, monster. Well, she ran away, but she ran. Fortunately, like not what most kids do, or I guess what every kids do, but the adults actually listen. But she ran to a nearby camp where there was a bunch of women and alerted them. And the women, when they saw him, took him in, of course, and like tried to take care of. They gave him goat's milk to drink, and any food they gave him, he couldn't keep down at that point. I don't know if it's a mixture of the like malnourishment and dehydration, or the fact you've been eating raw animals. He probably had like salmonella, like crazy. Yeah. But anyway, they were able to give him food and milk, which milk sounds like the worst possible fucking thing, but especially warm milk in the desert. But they notified, somebody ran and notified the police who came and picked him up. But even that, like when the police showed up, they loaded him up in their Jeep, but they blindfolded him and they were all armed, and he kind of thought they were going to kill him because that's how they were acting. But from their perspective, there's just some weirdo in the desert. They don't know who the fuck he is. And when I say police, they take him over where he was at. The police and the military, it sounds like, are the same fucking thing. Like going back to the police headquarters is basically they're taking you to this little military base in the middle of the desert. So you see it from both sides. You don't want to just pick anybody up and just bring them into your base. Like, here you go, buddy.
Right.
But so he was kind of worried that it's like, oh, I survived all this, but now they're going to drag me somewhere and kill me. But as soon as they kind of figured it out, I imagine there was word out that they were looking for a lost marathon runner, and that's the story he told him too, and they realized that that's who he was. Everybody, they took the blindfold off, and they were happy they found him, and he was really fucking happy he got found. At that point, they got him to a hospital, and he got treatment. It'd take him months to recover. He'd been lost in the desert for 10 days, which when you read a story, it sounds like it had to be way more than that. So then I kind of read like 10 days, and that's 10 days lost, so it's not including the 4 where he was running in the marathon before he wandered off. But still, I figure, like, man, that's all you go through, and you barely, like, they were all shocked he survived, and I hear 10 days, I think, that's it?
Yeah.
But
all I'm thinking is last place. It's a bummer, man.
Disqualified, DQ.
Yeah.
But it's weird, because, like I say, I saw that, and I'm like, that's all 10 days, but if you threw me out in the desert, it'd be like 8 hours. I'd be like, fuck, I give up, slitting my wrists. So... he had lost 35 pounds, so great diet, which is probably really, really bad to lose 35 pounds when you're already a marathon run, like an extreme marathon runner. I doubt he had the weight to lose. 4 years later, he'd return and run the marathon again. So he doesn't give up. In fact, he was so obsessed with that desert that in 2015, this article I read was written in 2014, and in 2015 he was planning to run a 4,350-mile coast-to-coast route across the same desert. I couldn't find whether or not he actually did that, but he's definitely like completed the marathon that he was running when he got lost a number of times, and he's apparently still alive, so that's good. But if you can imagine, it does mention how, like, he survives all this. The first thing when he finally got to call his wife, and it turns out, like, as he was lost, his brother and brother-in-law from Italy had flown out to help authorities look for them. They had found, like, traces, like, where he'd left gear behind. I think it said they even found the flag that he left at the shrine. So I guess technically chances are, had he stayed there, they would have found him anyway. But you never know that for sure. But by the time he got to the hospital and was able to call his wife, his first words to her was, "Have you had the funeral already?" Because he just assumed everybody thought he was dead. Well, everybody did think. Right. Can I get some of that sweet, sweet pension? But after surviving all of that and then deciding that I want to keep running in the desert, in fact, I want to do this like 3,000-mile run in the desert, his wife left him. But it says that it was like a mutual. It wasn't like, fuck you, I'm out. But man, I couldn't imagine being married to some guy that, like, already you have 3 kids and he put his life in danger and almost died. And he's like, I'm going back out there. It's like, what the fuck?
It's all right. In 10 years, you can pay for something.
The really interesting thing is when he finally found this, like, nomadic, tribe or whatever, the farmers that saved him and then got him to this to the police and to the hospital. Turns out he had crossed the border into Algeria, and he was 181 miles off course. So he wasn't even close. It wasn't like, and that's the problem with navigating if you're walking from one end to the other of a grocery store and you're off by a degree, you're going to be like an aisle over. Oh, well. When you're in a fucking desert and you're even slightly off, you can end up in another damn country. And it's just amazing that he survived and then kept wanting to do it. Like, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to be a couch potato for the rest of my life.
And then Steve never went anywhere again.
I just can't imagine. Like, he was 39 when he did all this. So it's also not like he was super... when you're talking about, and I'm not saying like 40's old, because I'm almost there myself. But when you're talking like that kind of wear and tear on your body,
yeah,
weird guy.
So if there's a message you could take from today is stay indoors and keep your eyes shut.
And if you're ever thirsty, just find an animal and cut its head off. Not cats or dogs, though. Those are off limit. Anything else, though, you can drink their blood all you want. So, like I said, uplifting.
Yeah, for sure. Bye.